Hello guys, and welcome to a new Steel Division video today by me, Vulcan. Today I have for you game 1 in a best of 3 between Player and Herr Robert in the third place final of the second European tournament. So after both of these players unfortunately lost their semi-finals, they're now playing for third place in the tournament, and it should be some really good games. Of course, both of these players high class, definitely have a lot to show, and I think Herr Robert in this series will definitely try his best due to his lackluster performance in game 1 against Gonzo in the semi-final, so I feel like he has a little bit to make up for. Either way, today we are going to be seeing Omaha, and on the Allied side, Player has chosen the 4th Armoured, and on the Axis side, Herr Robert has chosen the 3rd Fallschirmjäger. Now the 4th Armoured, of course well known for their strong all-round units. They have a solution to most problems, and that comes down to things like the Bantams that you can see Player has already put down, M8 Cavalries, the M4 Abrams in Phase A. They also have the B-26Bs, which are fantastic for strafing your opponent in Phase A or throughout the game. However, he is up against the 3rd Fallschirmjäger, so I doubt those B-26Bs will be used too much due to the air presence of the 3rd Fallschirmjäger. The 3rd Fallschirmjäger, though, they have plenty of tricks up their sleeve. They have really nice recon squads, the Fallschirm Scharfschütze and the Fallschirmpanzerabwehr. Then there is, of course, the infantry, the Fallschirmjägers, and the Fallschirm Pioneers in Phase B. They can be accompanied by the Fallschirmführer, of course, with the Panzerschrecks and the L6s to support them along the way. Moving through the phases, they do gain access to some Stugs to help them out in terms of armour, but I doubt that is where Herr Robert's going to focus. He has a map that really does suit a 3rd Fallschirmjäger playstyle, and the reason for that mainly is due to the spacing between the hedgerows and tree lines. So for example, on this top side, the Fallschirmjäger work really well here because the distance between this tree line and this one you can see is just less than 200 meters, or just less than 200 meters. From this one to this one, it's just less than 250 meters. This means that the Panzerschrecks are always going to be in range of whatever they come up against, and that is something that the Fallschirmjägers can definitely take advantage of. And of course, the Fallschirmjägers squads themselves do have a Panzerfaust, which has 150 meter range. So some of these, where they're closer, that even becomes a problem for a division like the 4th Armoured. That's not to say the 4th Armoured isn't without infantry, but they do have to rely quite a lot on rifles. So getting rid of things like Panzerschrecks, when there are Fallschirmjäger squads that they have to be up against at their ideal range, it's going to be difficult. And what I mean by that is the Fallschirmjägers, they work best at over 100 meter range, and therefore the rifles will have a hard time. But I am very curious to see what Player decides to do, because I think this is going to be a very tough one for him against the Fallschirmjäger. Either way, on the top side here for Herr Robert, he has the Panzerschreck and L6. There's going to be 2 units of Fallschirmjägers with a mortar, also the Fallschirmführer. Further down we see some standard recon, the Aufklärer in the Kubler MG. Then we have some more Fallschirmjäger with the Panzerschreck. There's going to be 2 Fallschirm Flammenwerfers. And then we see the Fallschirmjäger with the Fallschirm Panzerschreck. Over on the other side, Player on the bottom is going to be relying on a Bantam, followed up by some rifles. It's going to be some rifles for the middle of the map as well. And then on the top side, it's going to be a double M8 cavalry push with 3 rifles, a Jeep there with command, and the MGMC. Now I actually really like this setup. These M8 cavalries, they can deal very well with things like L6s, so if they do not get caught out by Panzerschrecks, for example, then I think he's going to be in for a pretty good game here. The MGMC works really well if you can keep it out of range of those bazookas or the Panzerfaust and Panzerschrecks as well. What is interesting to see with the 4th Armoured is the initial use of the F5A Recon Lightning, which isn't something that is seen very often, but allows player to get an eye on all of the units that Herr Robert is bringing in, give him a rough idea of what he can expect to be up against, and maybe find a hole in the front line early on. Now we're seeing the engagement between the L6 and the cavalries. L6, rightly so, going to get out of the way of that engagement. 81mm mortar actually going to come down with smoke. Interesting choice. I would have expected that smoke to be a lot closer to the Fallschirmjäger here if that was going to be the case. Because at this sort of range, surely the smoke is just going to have the vehicles drive through. So this is much better smoke. Herr Robert has realised that. However, his Panzerschreck is definitely in a very dodgy position. As soon as these rifles breach their tree line here, I feel like that's a dead Panzerschreck, and that's not something you can really afford at this stage, especially when you did just see two M8 cavalries coming towards your lines. The L6 has been caught out as well. Crew wound is going to allow these M8 cavalry surely to finish that off. However, they are missing their target at the moment. It looks like the 50 cals ended up doing the job. 81mm mortar trying to pin down the rifles. Fallschirmjäger, they're going to have to do a runner. No way that they can stay where they are. So an interesting engagement on this top side. I feel like Herr Robert maybe mismanaged this a little. L6 shouldn't have come around the tree line, I don't think, and the Panzerschreck, there's no way that should have been standing in the middle of the field. But player has taken complete advantage. He's now going to be running down these Fallschirmjägers. The 81mm mortar is actually under fire from the 50 cals from the M8 cavalry, and that's going to be dead. So no more mortar support for the top side. There is going to be a Kubel bringing in the Pak 41 Gerlich. Whether or not this can get the job done remains to be seen. It's actually a Puption. My bad. And that's going to kill off the Bantam. Should have realised that really, because the Pak 41s, they come in the Kubels with the MGs on them, rather than a Kubel which does not. Either way, the Puption, that's gotten the job done onto the Bantam, but won't be able to survive the MGMC, since the MGMC is engaging outside of 500 meter range, and the range of the Puption is quite limited. The Fallschirmjägers on the very top side there, they are going to be completely taken out. Meanwhile, on the rest of the map, it is very, very silent. Players getting away with only defending with 3 units of rifles at the moment. The Fallschirmjägers not making a single move. So, yeah, players put this concentrated push into the top side. He's found himself a +1, and he will be looking to build on that advantage as he continues. But there is no recon here, so future Fallschirm Panzerschreck squads can maybe get the jump onto those units. But once again, the Panzerschreck squad is just going to be chilling on the road. I feel that Herr Robert really needs to pay attention to his Panzerschreck placement. Otherwise, players just going to run him down. And there's a second MGMC on the field now. Now this may actually be setting up for a B-26B, because if a B-26B came in at this point, there's no way a fighter on the side of the 3rd Fallschirmjäger is going to shoot it down due to the double AA. So a B-26B supporting this push on the top side could be a really, really good idea right now. But these MGMCs, they are just in general very useful, because they can sort of pin down enemy infantry and fire support weapons like the Puption very easily. Now Herr Robert, he's going to use the HS-129 to try and take out the MGMC, but at this sort of range, the MGMC is going to do a lot of damage, and the HS-129 goes down. That is the risk of using a plane to try and take out AA, is if you do not, and you are unsuccessful in doing so, then you will get punished, and the HS-129 goes down there. Due to being very close to the 2-star 50 cals of the M8 cavalries, as well as the quad 50 cal on the MGMC. So, that may have seemed like a weird play to some of you guys, but if the HS-129 had managed to kill the MGMC, then it may have switched to the shot onto the other MGMC, and then that would have been both of the AA down, allowing Herr Robert to use his air force throughout the rest of the game. But now, he's definitely lost a lot of points, and he's not going to be making them back anytime soon. Fallschirm Panzerschreck gets taken out on the top side. Rifles just cleanly kill them with the BAR. That is not something that Herr Robert would have liked to have seen. Now a Pak 41 Gerlich is on the way. They come in the Kubel MG, as I mentioned, as opposed to a usual Kubel. So that's going to have to get quite a lot of kills here. And honestly, it wouldn't be the first time I've seen one do so. The Pak 41s, especially if they have some command near them and they're 3-star veterancy, can take shot after shot very quickly and kill multiple units if it's placed in the right location. And since it can utilize 1000 meter range, it doesn't necessarily have to worry about the 800 meter range of the MGMC. Now in the mid, it looks like player is going to be trying his luck. He's pushing forwards with this rifle squad now, finding himself a little salient, mainly helped by the F5A there and its recon capability. Notice there wasn't much standing in his way, the salient definitely telling him the same thing, and so he's going to secure himself likely these buildings and then probably bring in some reinforcements. Now some recon has arrived on this top side for player, definitely something he needed to help himself continue to push, but his play around the MGMCs and M8 Cavalries is currently held in its tracks because of the use of the Pak 41 Gerlich here, and he knows there's a Puption somewhere, as he did not kill that previously. But 59% territory lead for player is a very good start. He's got himself in a really nice position with his initial aggression on the top side, and Herr Robert's going to have a hard time trying to bring back the territory. It will mainly come down to whether or not the 3rd Fallschirmjäger can enable their air force again, which they've already tried to do once, but will probably continue to do throughout the game. But also just find ground back. Like the 3rd Fallschirmjäger, they're not very fast at pushing because they rely so much on infantry. And that could be something that holds Herr Robert back from winning the game, because he will find it difficult to make back that many points quickly. In the late game though, the 145 points per minute will definitely help enable the air force again, so that's maybe something that Herr Robert can try and wait for. And in the meantime, sort of contain this initial aggression from player, which he has seemed to do rather successfully so far. The positioning of this MG, the Kubel MG, is a bit dodgy for me. I feel like Herr Robert's certainly forgetting to move a lot of his units. I don't mind the fact that it's in the Kubel MG, it's just the placement. It'd be much better off behind one of these tree lines so that it was not spotted. Because the last thing you want is like the M8 Cavalry to just take a cheeky shot at your Kubel MG and then kill it while the Pak 41 is loaded up, because then you lose the Pak 41 for free. But here comes off map M4A1 OP now coming in. That's going to be pinning down the Fallschirmjägers and the Panzerschreck in the buildings here, allowing the rifles to get aggressive. You can see that he is going to just be fast moving straight in there with the help of the Jeep 30 cal. The Jeep 30 cal is going to get taken out by the MGs of the Fallschirmjäger, but the rifles able to just easily unload there with the cover of the 50 cal and 30 cal of the M4A1 OP, and they will survive to fight another day. They can also just continue to press on to these buildings, and you can see here that the rifles, they are going to recover and gain back this ground once again. Now the Fallschirmjägers on the top side, they did kill off one of the rifles. They're now engaging the armoured LMG rifles. The armoured LMG rifles are actually pretty decent at range, since they do have the two 30 cals with 8 HE, but they don't quite match up to the 2-star Fallschirmjägers with two MG34s. Because the veterancy means that the armoured LMG rifles will get pinned down quicker than the Fallschirmjägers. After that, they're going to get taken out as the recon discover those and the rifles clean them up. Kubel MG will most likely be spotted soon as well, and there is now another Puption on the way. That is going to be brought in by this Kubel to maybe take a shot at the M4A1 OP. There goes the Kubel. On the top side, Pak 41 Gerlich has been unloaded. That's going to be taking shots at the MGMC. It is going to find the kill, so that is one of potentially many kills that could occur here with the Pak 41 if it is micro correctly. So that's a good start for Herr Robert. Fallschirmjäger, they're going to be able to pin down and surrender a unit as well. Fallschirmjägers further down, they're going to be forced back. Puption has been forced to unload early due to the fire from the rifles, but these rifles, they're not lasting too well as they move into those buildings. The Fallschirmjäger hitting those at their ideal range engagement. So Herr Robert's definitely sort of stabilized here after a rather lackluster beginning to this game. Losing two of those Panzerschrecks very freely was really nasty, and left him in a really poor position to deal with this initial push that player was relying upon. But now he has the units in position that he needs. The Puption here can certainly kill off this M3A1 half track, which will get rid of 150 cal fire support. And then he can potentially look to kill the M4A1 OP. But that's going to get taken out very quickly by the armoured LMG rifles there and the rifle squad. Puption goes down in trade for a 50 cal half track. That is less than ideal. Pack 41 is going to be taking a quick shot at the Jeep 30 cal potentially. Player actually notices that and is going to save his Jeep 30 cal. So some very good management of his forces there from player. I think player is definitely looking for a way to continue his aggression though, and is started to rely quite a lot on these M21 mortar carriers. Now they're actually a really nice choice because he can basically kill off the Puptions with them, he can kill off the Pack 41, and that's exactly what he's trying to do here so that the M8 Cavalries can get aggressive again with the help of the infantry and continue the push. But Herr Robert, he has other plans. He's bringing in a 380mm off-map. He's going to show player how it's really done. This 155mm off-map is going to shy in the face of 380mm of artillery there. That's going to be incredible power in comparison. But either way, Pack 41 takes out the Jeep eventually. Looks like player kind of sacrificed it this time around to discover the location of the Pack 41 and will potentially try and mortar that. But Herr Robert's doing a nice job of picking it up and moving it every time it gets a kill. And that's a really good high-class play to see. So the Fallschirmjägers are going to continue engaging with rifles anyway, and generally Fallschirmjägers, they can kill off rifles so damn easy usually. So these rifles definitely struggling, and this off-map will soon hit very, very hard. If Herr Robert is lucky, it should kill off this armoured leader, and by doing so will leave the other rifle squads open to surrender. There's also potential that off-map could kill the M4A1 OP, so we might see that. But off-map in general is only really like super useful if you have a unit that can make the forces you pin down surrender. But what I just noticed on the top side here, another nice kill by the Pack 41, this time picking off the second MGMC, and this must be getting very frustrating for player. Immediately the M21 mortar carrier is looking to reply by killing the Pack 41. Only a matter of time until player finds that kill, but losing both of his AA pieces on that top side requires them to be replaced, and that is why player is bringing in 2 CGMCs, especially if he wants to continue to be able to use this recon aircraft, which has actually been really useful in helping him find salients and gaps in the front line throughout this game. So the Pack 41, that's going to go down. Herr Robert's now going to try and invest in his own AA. That is a Flak 88 he's bringing in. That can also help as AT on this top side, but he will have to be careful that the M21 mortar carrier does not get into range, or that he does not get off-mapped by the M4A1 OP, which is another potential. This 380mm off-map, it looks like it's zooming up this road in order to try and find a artillery strike onto the mortar carrier. Yeah, Herr Robert's going to be going for that, because these mortar carriers, they can become very obnoxious and they're extremely hard to kill, because counter battery, just standard counter battery, will not quite do the job. But it looks like player's going to take advantage of that positioning by bringing in a P38, and that's actually going to kill off the 380mm off map before it's used all 3 strikes, which is a quite nice kill for player to find. But we'll have to wait and see if this off map still lands onto the M21, because that will be a nice and reply. Player may be aware of what the target was, but he may be a little bit too late in repositioning that to prevent the strike from hitting the mark. So it doesn't seem to be quite doing the job. Large shots there coming in, but completely missed. And so that M21 mortar carrier is going to be a nuisance for Herr Robert for likely the rest of the game, as long as a player does not move it into direct line of sight of maybe a Stug in the future. So at the moment, Fallschirmjägers, they are definitely at risk on this top side. As soon as the rifles bump into those, they will be pinned completely and likely surrender. It really does depend if the rifles keep moving though. I can't believe they're standing that close and they can't see each other. That's something you don't see very often. But as presented on the top side, the M21 has found its way into range of the 88mm, and that is not good news for Herr Robert, as that will continue to take damage as long as that remains the case. M4A1OP, that's going to be taking out the Kubel MG. Fallschirmjäger, they're going to be engaging the armored LMG rifles, but with the help of the M4A1OP, the Fallschirmjägers will find themselves pinned down, and there is not much Herr Robert can do about that other than fall back. He doesn't have any command here, so he will have to be very careful that the Fallschirmjägers do not get overran by this M4A1OP. He does have a Fallschirmpanzerschreck in position. However, it's getting awfully close to this armoured leader that may spot it. It really does depend which comes first, the Panzerschreck firing or the armoured leader finding it. And it looks like the Fallschirmpanzerschreck's going to find the kill. It's not going to come under fire since the armoured leader is on return fire, but the armoured LMG rifles, they may look for the shot, as the armoured leader can still see the Fallschirmpanzerschreck as it comes past. Now with the M4A1OP out the way, the L6 is quite happily going to help engage these infantry squads, and there isn't really any sort of AP value units to stop this L6 from making some ground now. So this is an opportunity that Herr Robert really needs to take advantage of. This is where he could get an L6 right into the face of the mortar carriers and take them out. And if he does do so, that could open up a lot of opportunities for a comeback on this top side. Now the 88 with the M8 cavalry trying to move to the bottom side did get taken out. The other M8 cavalry has also died up there in the meantime, must have missed that happening. But on the bottom side, here comes an M4 105mm. Now these are quite scary, especially against the Fallschirmjäger, because both the infantry and the support units, like Pak 41s and Puptions, are at a real threat to M4 105s. The Fallschirmjägers don't really have an AT weapon that is good enough to kill an M4 105. Like, these are really good against pretty much everything the Fallschirmjäger have, as long as it can utilize its 1000 meter range. So this could be a really, really scary unit if used in the right place. But here comes the L6. That's looking for the kill onto the M21 mortar carrier. Meanwhile, Herr Robert's using this time to try and find ground with the Fallschirmjägers. But this M4105, with the help of the P38 Lightning, is going to force back this L6. And since that is on its own, it is not going to be successful in finding the kill onto the M21 mortar carrier just yet. The 57% territory lever player, he's built up a massive lead so far, 1,470 points. It's going to be extremely difficult for Herr Robert to come back, but we can't ignore the fact that he will have 145 points per minute to work with in Phase C. Losing an Opel Blitz there with potentially forces inside is not a good start though. Also, Fallschirmjägers, they're going to be surrendered by the armoured leader as they get forced back by the M21 mortar carrier. L6 is not doing too well, but it looks like in the end the rifles, they found themselves pinned and instantly surrendered. The Fallschirmjägers ended up engaging them from distance. These Fallschirmjägers didn't even know they were there the whole time. That's rather interesting, and well, that's a really nice kill for the Fallschirmpanzerschreck. Takes out one of the Stuarts that was brought in to reinforce. Now this really shouldn't have happened, since player has seen this Fallschirmpanzerschreck take out his M4A1OP already, and the armoured leader were like close for a very long time to spot those. These armoured LMG rifles, they were found by the Aufklärer. They're coming under fire from the 88, but here comes Abrams M4 75mm. That could clean up any armor that Herr Robert has very easily indeed. It's going to hit this SBW AB41 and probably kill that off. It has got the engine destroy, so only a matter of time. Panzer L6, that's going to have to try and stay out of the way of this M4, because even at close range it's going to have a hard time at doing so. But this is player's attempt to kill off the Panzerschreck now. I don't think he's going to really find a direct hit onto the Panzerschreck at that position, because he's slightly firing off target, and that's not ideal. Some of players' recon on the top side did just get taken out by the 88mm there, so that is going to blind player for the time being. And you can see that just in general, player's infantry front line is rather lackluster. He doesn't have much infantry left on this top area. Like, there is only recon, the armored leader, and the pinned down armored LMG rifles. And this could lead to a large disparity moving into the late game, whereby Herr Robert can control all of these tree lines because he has the infantry, and therefore that disables the effectiveness of players' vehicles. So if Herr Robert gets very aggressive with the Fallschirmjägers now, and forces these vehicles to expose themselves to prevent the Fallschirmjägers from advancing, then he can use things like the 88 and other AT guns to find the kills. And that is a real smart way of making back some ground at this point in the game. It's really whether or not Herr Robert can identify how much infantry player has left, because he has relied a lot on rifles throughout the game so far, and I doubt he's going to have that many more at his disposal, since many of them have died or had their squads cut down to size by the Fallschirmjägers so far. Now, there is going to be a Stug 3G on the field. I think it is definitely a good idea to have a Stug supporting some of the Fallschirmjäger units, because you do need armor to progress quickly. Also, the Stug 3 could be the answer for the M4105 that is currently doing a lot of damage to his Fallschirmjäger units. It's also got really decent veterancy, so could even challenge M4 Abrams, but Abrams could also kill the Stug if he's not too careful. The main thing here though is that if the Stug continues to engage at range, then it should win, because the M4 only has 11 AP against the 10 front armor of the Stug. Now the Stug is actually moving into a really smart location here. He's basically looking to cut off the retreat of the M4 by moving to the other side very quickly, and that's the M4 going down. The Fallschirmpanzerschreck did take out the M5A1 Stuart, but player is still at a +1, so regardless of the fact that Herr Robert has been finding these kills, he is not making much progress. And I mentioned before that relying on infantry is a very slow way to make back territory, and that is a problem that Herr Robert's going to have to face if he wants to win. So the best bet really is to have units like these L6s waiting and ready to go, and as soon as that armor goes down, use these L6s in conjunction with your infantry to just charge forwards. But I'm surprised to have not seen that take place just yet. He just killed off the M4 Abrams and the M5A1, so now you would think is a crucial time for him to really invest in some Fallschirmjägers and make some serious ground. He can use the Stug to challenge the M4 105 on the bottom side here, and it's not like he's having a hard time identifying the units in these buildings either, so it's not like there's a bazooka threat to his units. Also, just in general, the 4th Armoured don't tend to rely too much on bazookas. You can see they don't have any bazookas with their main infantry, they have to rely on them separately. But a lovely kill there for the P38 is going to kill another 380mm off-map before it gets off more than one strike, which is extremely important. 210mm off-map on the top side is going to be trying to make some ground. That might actually hit these cavalry scouts and take those out. So that would be a really nice kill, because once again that's the only infantry AT on the top side. Here comes the L6, that's once again pressing towards the M21 mortar carrier. The artillery is going to do the job in making these units fall back, but it's up to player to get this bazooka in the right position to take out the L6. And the L6 that did, I think, see the recon there and was going to take them out, but the bazooka is going to get into position, finish off the L6. The M21 does survive once again. But here we see that engagement between the M4 105 and the Stug. It looks like Herr Robert's really getting ready to kick this into gear and get aggressive. Nice kill onto the M21 mortar carrier as that was retreating. Now, what has been extremely interesting throughout this game is the way that player has maintained control of the skies. That is not something you often see against the 3rd Fallschirmjäger, because the 3rd Fallschirmjäger, they have access to things like 2-star Me-109s. But this is a very, very important kill here for player. He found the or he brought in an M4A1 Rhino, and he found a close range engagement against the Stug, and by doing so finds the kill. He was very lucky that he did, because if he'd missed that shot, then he wouldn't have had a second chance. The internal fragments from the Stug would have meant that the M4A1 would have been out of ammunition, and therefore not able to continue the engagement, allowing the Stug to support the infantry in another push. But now that Stug's not there, the M4105 is enabled again. It's going to prevent any of this infantry from pushing across the open, and so Herr Robert's just stuck in that position once again. Really, really bad news for Herr Robert. I can't see him really coming back at this point. He has 13 minutes and 45 seconds left on the clock. But 8 minutes and 50 seconds until player wins the game if he continues with a +1. So Herr Robert's got to make some moves. This 88, it's got to find the kill onto the M4105, but it looks like the M4 will be able to kill off the 88, and that is unfortunate because now the M4105, it's still alive and still going to cause issues for Herr Robert if he wants to make some ground. So another Stug is on the way, and that is exactly what he needs. It's just this time he's got to keep it alive. The M12 GMC has been utilized on the side of player. He's been trying to pop infantry squads and support weapons on the top side with that. This is a very, very strong artillery piece with the 29 HE there, causing a bit of a traffic jam due to it sitting on the road. But either way, definitely a decent unit for pinning down a lot of this infantry and these weapons as they try and push forwards and present themselves. Now player is going to be investing into the M4A176s, and this is going to make things really difficult for this Stug 3, because the M4A176 can engage at 1200 meter range just like these Hellcats, and therefore the Stug will suffer if it takes those longer range engagements. But then you would say, why doesn't he just use close range engagements? Well, the M4A176 has a faster aim time than the Stug. So at any sort of range, the M4A176 does definitely trump a Stug 3, unless the Stug 3 is already aiming at its target when it comes around the corner. Now Robert though, he's going to try and make a little bit of ground here. He's got some off-map coming down. I think he's just using the last strike from the 210mm. He's trying to find the kill onto the Hellcat, but with the aggression of the L6, it does look like he's moved the M18 Hellcat, probably unwittingly, but the Hellcat's still going to get hit pretty hard by that off-map, and now the L6 actually has a decent chance to run that down. But what he probably doesn't expect is there to be a Stuart sitting on the road. There's also going to be a P38 Lightning coming in. That's actually going for the bombing strike onto the PaK-41. But look at this, triple L6 push. Can that be stopped? I'm sure player can invest in another bomber to maybe prevent that aggression from coming through. Robert's just got to be wary that he doesn't let these group up. And he's also got to make sure that he just continues fast moving regardless of the positioning of this M5A1, because otherwise this M20 or this M12 GMC as well as bombing strikes could just turn this on its head. Looks like Herr Robert's bailing out here, but can't really afford to do so if he wants to win this game. And honestly, with 10 minutes and 50 seconds left on the clock, coming back 2,145 points is more or less impossible, especially when your player is still trying to prevent you from doing so. Those Fallschirmjägers, they're not long for this world, as the 50 cals do come on target there from the M4A1 and the M4A176. Really, really bad news for Herr Robert. He will not be able to win this game. The Fallschirmpanzerschreck there takes one last kill with it as it goes down. Just a simple half track, but nonetheless, still a decent attempt. Did take out a couple of important units previously. CGMC there, that's going to get taken out by the L6. L6 on the main road, that bounced a couple shots from the M5A1, but the Stug here, along with these auto cannon units, going to try and make some ground. There's now an M4A1 Rhino that's going to get involved. And both of these units, they're going to move aggressively forwards. P38's going to bomb the Stug. And that's going to pin both the L6 and Stug down. Easy kills here for the M4A1 and M5A1. There goes the Stug. 210mm off map's dead. L6 is going to be dead very shortly. And that has crushed Herr Robert's chances on the top side. Puption goes down in the mid as the infantry gets aggressive. And, well, I think early on, Herr Robert maybe lost that little bit too much ground. His Panzerschrecks really needed to do a lot more work against the mobile units of player in order to stop that aggression early on and give Herr Robert a better chance to build up his forces into the late game and then get the job done then. Like, I think that was the best chance for the 3rd Fallschirmjäger, sort of working with attrition in Phase A and Phase B, and then utilizing the full force of the 145 points per minute in Phase C to bring down like the entire German Air Force onto the enemy, because it's incredibly surprising to me that the 4th Armoured has managed to hold the skies against the Fallschirmjäger throughout this game. But it mainly comes down to the fact that player's done so much damage to Herr Robert's ground forces that he's been forced to replace them throughout the game, and therefore not had the points to invest in aircraft. And if he had invested in aircraft instead of replacing the forces on the ground, he would have just lost more ground. So that's kind of the situation that Herr Robert got stuck in based on his first few engagements. And that's why we're sitting in this situation. But you can see that Herr Robert did have a lot of points in his hands. This is not cheap. That is, I guess, 3 units of Fallschirmjägers. There's an AA in there, there's some command, there's the SBW AB41 and the L6, and they're all making a play for the bottom side now. One last desperate attempt here from Herr Robert, but not really going to pay off. There is 2 minutes and 50 seconds left until player is victorious if he remains at a +1. So that's what Herr Robert's got to stop. And then he's got 7 minutes and 30 seconds to make back 2,340 points, which is impossible at this moment. The SBW AB41 is actually being defeated by a Bantam as the B-26P Marauder comes into strafe. Bomber does end up pinning down 2 units of Fallschirmjägers, or Fallschirm Pioneers, 1 Fallschirmjäger and a Fallschirmführer. This is going to be a mass surrender if the L6 does not kill the Bantam. Yep, there they go. That is absolutely nasty to see. Shooter wound onto the Bantam as it goes into hell down on that bottom side. But that has actually left the bottom side undefended. The Bantam not holding the front line anymore does mean that this is going to be a +1. But yeah, player's still potentially going to win in 1 minute and 50 seconds. We'll have to see if this gets extended by going to the 50-50, but all it's going to take really is for player to push aggressively on the top side or even in the mid to find more ground back, even though Herr Robert is being aggressive on this bottom side. And with the arrival of the Hellcat, well, this L6, that's not going to be able to continue much further. Oh, and that's going to be the SPW AB41 going down. Hellcat showing what it's made of at long range there. And it seems like player did have enough infantry in the end. I was a little bit worried that he was running low, especially at one point on the top side. It looked like he had barely any left. But now it doesn't really matter. Player's just securing his victory now in the mid here. He's even pushed it to a +2. There's 25 seconds left on the clock here until he finds the 2,500 points to gain victory in the first game of this best of 3 versus Herr Robert to claim 3rd place. So that's going to be another unit of infantry going down. This is giving player certainly a very nice KD. But congratulations to player. He's going to be taking the victory in the first game after 34 minutes and 42 seconds. Nicely done. 3,150 kills for 1,535 losses. So just about a 2-to-1 KD. Nicely done. And honestly, I'm surprised that it happened the way it did. I felt like Herr Robert, yeah, he just kind of lost a little bit too much in the early game, where the 3rd Fallschirmjäger really struggled to reinforce themselves. Because if you think about it, a Fallschirmjäger unit costs 45 points. Really, really expensive infantry. And you have, I think, 75 or 85 points to work with in Phase A. But either way, you can't afford 2 units of Fallschirmjägers with 1 minute of income. So that means you can basically bring in like 3 infantry for every 2 minutes of income, which is really, really bad. So you have to make sure that your units get value for money in Phase A, and Herr Robert just couldn't find it. The Panzerschrecks, they died too easily. Like, even if they'd only killed 1 M8 cavalry or like one of the MGMCs, that would have been enough to make the difference, or at least prevent player from being so aggressive. But having those Panzerschrecks so clearly taken out meant player could just go full on into the breach without having to worry about the Panzerschrecks killing him, because he just killed them straight out in the open there, and that would have given him the confidence to go that step further. So early on, the M8 cavalry, it actually ended up claiming the kill onto the HS-129B1 that we saw come in. That was a very risky play from Herr Robert, and it didn't pay off. There was a chance that it could have killed the MGMCs, like both of them, and that would have been the end of the air dominance for the 4th Armoured. But it didn't quite work out that way. The HS-129 went down, and Herr Robert was discouraged from using an air force throughout the rest of the game, which, as the 3rd Fallschirmjäger, is a really, really bad place to be. He also lost the 81mm mortar to the initial aggression, so it didn't have that to stop the rifles from getting the better of the tree lines. So the Fallschirmführer there, and the Fallschirmpanzerschreck and the Fallschirmpanzerabwehr, they've all gone down to rifles as they breach these tree lines, and that is not good news. This P-38 bomber ended up killing 2 of those cue balls, the 380mm cue balls, and this paid itself off so damn nicely here. Even got credited for 2 of the Fallschirm Pioneer surrenders at the end of the game. The M12 GMC killed off the 88mm and the Flak 36, and Abrams killed off one of the SPW AB41s, but ended up getting killed by the Stug of Herr Robert, with a really nice movement there from Herr Robert, actually. Like, seeing that player pull back his M4 in a certain direction, and then kind of moved his Stug to intercept it. That was really, really well played, actually. But I think Herr Robert definitely lacked that sort of spark in the early game. It sort of showed throughout the mid-game. I think Herr Robert made a few nice plays here and there. But I think he was just too far gone by then. He lost his initiative and couldn't quite bring it back to the point where he could break through with his large income in Phase C. The Rhino doing well there to kill that Stug off just before it got internal fragmented. In terms of losses, well, the Pak-41, that was really, really well used. But again, this was more of a mid-game play where Herr Robert continued to pick that up with the Kubel MG and keep placing it in different areas in order to eventually kill off both of those MGMCs. But of course, since it had got into the mid-game in Phase B, the 4th Armoured had 130 points to work with in that phase. He just brought in 2 CGMCs instead, which is basically an upgrade, and stopped Herr Robert from utilizing that air force. Fallschirmjägers, they killed off the rifles and engineers. This Panzerschreck was the one that survived in the middle of the map for way too long. This was something that player really needed to commit a little bit more to take out, because it ended up killing 2 of the M5A1s and the M4A1OP, as well as that half-track at the end before it went down, which is a really, really cost-effective Panzerschreck. And this is what I would have liked to have seen earlier in the game, but didn't quite come to fruition. The Stug 3 there, of course, taking out Abrams, and that was about it. It just didn't really go well from there on out, because Herr Robert, he brought in all of these L6s and so on, and they got bombed and then taken out by the pushback from player. So, yeah. I think it was definitely an interesting game. Shows how you can defeat the 3rd Fallschirmjäger with the 4th Armoured on a 3rd Fallschirmjäger favoured map, I would say. So that was nicely done by player, but we'll have to see if Herr Robert can bring one back in Game 2 of this best of 3 and show us what he's made of in this tournament. But until then, hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.